Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, possibly the best weekly podcast for CMOs and everyone else looking for innovative ways to transform their brand, drive demand, and just plain cut through, proving that B2B does not mean boring to business. Here's your host and Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. If you're listening to this show, my guess is that you are a believer in the power of marketing and most likely are a marketer yourself. You know from experience that marketing can be transformational, and you also know that not every organization is ready to become marketing centric. And at some point in your career, you're going to find yourself at a company that is sales driven or engineering driven, yet wants you to be the one to change that. They want you to be the one who moves the organization forward, that turns marketing into a revenue driving machine, that brings accountability and consistency to what used to be an understaffed and undervalued, I'll call it a backwater. It's a big ask, but oh so rewarding, which brings us to today's guest, Johnny Smith Jr., the VP of Marketing at Encompass Health, who will be sharing not only what he's been up to for the last 16 months, but also provide a step-by-step guide for how you too can approach marketing transformation. Hello, Johnny. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Drew.
How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm doing really, really well. Happy to be talking with you today.
Well, it's great to have you. Now, where are you?
So I'm based in Birmingham, Alabama, and this is home for Encompass Health. Just quick background. Encompass Health is based here in Birmingham, but we operate around 140 rehabilitation hospitals in 39 states. We also have home health and hospice as well. So we're the largest operator of rehabilitation hospitals in the country.
Got it. Okay. That's excellent. Now, I want to step back before we talk about Encompass, because I noticed on LinkedIn that you have a master's in communications from Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
Honestly, you're the first person that I know that has gone through that program. And we do have some younger listeners, some college-age kids who might contemplate grad school. So I think the question is, was it worth it? Would you recommend that?
Highly, highly, highly would recommend Johns Hopkins University. I will say this to all the listeners out there that are really truly thinking about getting a master's degree is make certain that you have a purpose and a goal in mind first. Don't just go and do it just because your friends are doing it, your colleagues are doing it, or your mentors are recommending it. Ensure that it truly aligns with your career path and your goals. Because so when I went into my program, I knew I wanted to additional career advancement, and I learned more about the craft of marketing and communications. That was one of the reasons I went into and invested in a master's degree. So I would tell your listeners, have a purpose and be intentional before you go and invest thousands of dollars in a master's degree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know folks who've gotten an MBA, and part of the reason to do that was to get the transition. Another part, of course, was the credibility, particularly from client side. But a master's in communications, that's a very sort of specialized thing, but it certainly sort of gives you at least that credential for continuing in your career. And I noticed that you've really spent the bulk of your career in healthcare with long stints at St. Vincent's and Ascension. What is it about healthcare that sort of keeps you excited and engaged?
It's truly about the service that our clinicians, our health frontline essential workers on the front line deliver for patients every day. I get the luxury of truly just telling their story, telling the story of the company and basically engaging with those key stakeholder groups. When you can walk the halls at a pediatric unit, a cancer unit, and see the high level and compassionate care is delivered, it gives a different perspective on life. And
Yeah.
really, it started with the purpose, right? It aligned with my belief system. And then from there, it just took off with tremendous career growth opportunities as well. So I would encourage anyone who's interested specifically on the healthcare provider side, it is a rewarding career, and it truly, truly can serve a purpose if that's what you're calling.
It's interesting. As you were talking, I'm wondering, did you ever think about being a physician?
I did not. I did not. I was I know my limits, Drew. I know my limits, and I know how far I can stretch it. Being self-aware is also a good trait to have when you're a marketer as well, because we have high confidence in ourselves, right? But you have to be aware as well. And I know where my limits lie, and I know there's other people out there who can serve and deliver in a much more compassionate way than I can from the delivery side of healthcare.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was probably seventh grade science. Just the dissection alone was enough to convince me that was not the thing I wanted to do. But as you were talking about knowing your limitations, it reminds me of a CMO I talked to who, as a leader, actually gives all of her the folks that report into her her Myers-Briggs score, and her Myers not only and what how to approach her and how to manage up to her, which I always thought was so interesting. But that's off topic for the moment. So let's talk about, so you got to Encompass 16 months ago. I now know what attracted you to the role, and we've heard about what Encompass does. What was the situation like from a marketing perspective when you arrived there?
Yeah, so I was recruited to Encompass, and I report directly to our president of our inpatient hospitals. So she brought me in, and Barb Jacobs Meyer is her name. She brought me in, and she says, I want to create a marketing department. She goes, we've got a communications arm, we have a creative services arm, and then we also have a print shop. So these three areas have not historically had the same objective. They didn't have the same, goals in mind to target the customer. Actually, many of them had different customers. They reported into three different departments. So we had to come together as one. So what Barb said, she goes, I want you to take a look at this. This is a complete rebuild. And I want to find the person who has change management experience to lead it.
And it sounds like a change management job. I mean, when the way you're describing the marketing structure, it sounds very much like it was designed not so much as to drive the company forward, but as a service. We'll call it almost a backwater order taking service.
Well, they delivered value in a different way. It was mostly value internally focused. So it was looking at and supporting various departments within the organization with their individual goals or efforts that they needed. There wasn't a true focus on growth. In order to focus on growth, you have to be obsessed with the customer. So the first thing we had to do is truly dive in deep on who our customers are and how do they engage with us and what do they want from us and what behavior change were we seeking with them.
And let's stop there for a second, because first of all, you're very diplomatic, and I really appreciate that about you. And sort of becoming a marketing department versus a in-house service department for other departments is a big transition. And so I think it's interesting that you became recognized as someone who is a change agent. Again, this comes from sort of a self-awareness that senior marketers need to have. What are you good at? What do you like to do? So you saw this as an opportunity of change. Let's talk, before we talk about getting to know the customer a little bit, how did you approach consolidating these three departments?
So it's very basic, Drew. It truly starts with listening. So what I had to do was come in and just listen to all of our respective teams, the communications team, the print shop, and the creative services team. And I wanted to understand from them, what did value look like from their perspective? What were their challenges that they were experiencing? What was the perception of those respective teams? That was the first step, is to sit and listen. I think sometimes we get ahead of our skis as marketers, and we want to go in and start immediately implementing solutions. That's not our job. Our job is to listen first and then determine what the marketing strategy is, right? Let's do the same model as change management. So once I listened to them, then what I did is put guiding principles into play. And there's four guiding principles.
All
And
right,
these
before
are,
you get to these,
yeah.
because I know these are coming in, these are really valuable. I just
Mhm.
want to acknowledge one thing. First of all, one, getting ahead of your skis. I love that expression.
Mhm.
As someone who's the last time who was on a ski slope actually got ahead of his skis and had a massive crash and burn and actually broke a thumb, I totally appreciate that metaphor.
Ouch.
And I've seen it happen so many
Mhm.
times when a new marketer comes in and changes everything within a couple weeks before they've actually sort of built a foundation of understanding of the business. So let's try not to get ahead of our skis. And speaking of that, we're going to take a quick break. And so that when we come back, we're going to dive into the four principles that Johnny is going to lay out. So stay with us. Hey, it's Drew. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take a second to plug CMO Huddles. We launched this in 2020. CMO Huddles is an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of B2B CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. One CMO described a huddle as a cross between an expert workshop and a therapy session. If you're a B2B CMO that can share and care with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com. Okay, we're back. And we've been talking about, Johnny was about to lay out four principles. So let's take them one by one, Johnny, so we can really go through this. But what's the first principle?
The first principle is truly engaging in critical and creative thinking. Really, what I wanted here is I wanted to respectfully challenge what is known. We know we were doing business in a certain way, but this is our opportunity to implement change. The only way we can do that is to be looking at things creatively and critically. And we have to be comfortable with engaging in those critical conversations with one another. So that was the first one.
Okay,
The
wait,
second,
wait, wait, wait. I got, I like to break things down
oh yeah, oh yeah.
and talk about them. So I love the respectful part of this. Again,
Mhm.
you'll have a sense that you were talking about significant changes into an organization internally and then ultimately externally, and the diplomacy even in your language just shines through. I love it. Respectfully change. So we're acknowledging the past. Yeah, we did it a certain way, but that may not get us where we need to go. And boy, is that so important today. Because if we get stuck in the past, if we think about things only with well, this is the way we've always done it, you're not going to change anything. So engage creatively with a goal for respectful change. All right, that's number one. Let's go to number two. Thank you.
Number two, and this is the key here for all marketing, is to embrace accountability, being proactive, responsive, and collaborating while managing expectations. Marketing cannot be the department where accountability is non-existent. We
I
have
love that.
to we have
So
to embrace accountability.
okay, so embracing accountability. When I hear that, I'm thinking of understanding what an organization, what the remit is, as a lot of CMOs like to talk about. My remit to the organization is X percentage of leads in the pipeline. My remit to the organization is increased awareness by X percent. I'm curious, from your standpoint, what was embracing accountability? Talk a little bit about the details involved and what are we talking about being accountable for?
So initially, what I wanted to do, because this is even before the vision, this is before the strategic plan and everything. This is the initial first 30 days. Accountability was to each other. Accountability was managing expectations, making certain that our eyes aren't bigger than our stomachs, that we aren't over promising and under delivering. It was more of a behavior change amongst each other first, because I'm creating a culture of collaboration and support. That was the accountability initially.
Oh,
Now,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay. And
now fast forward a different
right.
stage. Yes.
So and I skipped right over that and I appreciate that. And I want to pause on that for a moment. So as we're taking these three different groups, we're saying, okay, and we've listened to what it is that we're doing, but we're going to end up consolidating the group into a department. And first and foremost, we want to be sort of agree that here's where we want to go, and we all commit to it together. That's sort of what I heard.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so we're embracing accountability internally, and then you were about to talk about, before I so rudely interrupted you, talk
No, you're
about
fine. You're fine. You're fine. And then now we're at a different level of accountability. But let me get to the third guiding principle, and that is one of my favorites. It's managing the three W's, and the three W's are who does what by when. Now, many of your listeners may say that's basic stuff. But in the when you're implementing a major change management effort with more than almost approximately 70 people around, and they've all operating on different objectives, etc., at times when you end a meeting, you don't close the meeting by who's doing something. When is it going to be done? Those three questions should be every question that every marketer should be asking at the conclusion of every meeting. And it ensures guiding principle number two is accountability. So managing the three W's is essential guiding principle that I would recommend that all of your viewers implement.
So let's talk about this, because what who does what by when is a great reminder, because too many meetings we go into and we say, hey, here's some great ideas, and then you leave the meeting and nobody's assigned anything, and so nothing gets done. I
That's right.
get that part of it. How do we make sure that as an organization, and this is particularly true for marketing, and I think given the background that you had with this group where they were order takers, because an order taking group can do who does what by when, but the what part, that what is really, how do we make sure that that's strategically aligned with the bigger goals of the organization? Because otherwise you're a team that's sort of, we're moving papers from our inbox to our outbox, we're getting stuff done, but we're not necessarily getting big stuff. So when do we make sure that the what we're doing is really important?
Yeah. So the first path to change management that I implemented was these guiding principles. Then I got to the strategic prioritization and our strategic plan. That's when we define the what.
Got it. So I got a little ahead of us. All right,
Yeah.
then we'll come back to that. We'll come to
Yes.
strategic plan in a bit. So we've got who does what by when. That's the managing the three W's. Then, so what's the fourth principle
The
then?
fourth one is building and managing knowledge assets. And really what that is truly investing in your team. Setting up collaboration tools for team development, growth, education, just truly investing in these individuals. I think it's the most important thing is that what I wanted to put in place is that we cared about each other and we want to see the growth of our department. The only way we were going to get to where I knew we needed to go is that we do it through our people. We have to invest in our people first. And the people have to continue to enhance their skills and knowledge base for us to get there. So that was a major, major effort, and it continues to be an effort today. So it's the fourth one, but arguably the most important one. Because
And
without us as leaders, our responsibility is to inspire and to serve. And I
so
needed to
let's
ensure that I
let's
put
break
that in
this one down a
practice.
little bit, because I completely agree and acknowledge that, look, a marketing department is really only as good as the people, the marketers in that department. What kind of tools specifically are we talking about? Are there, what kinds of things, actions that, what's the what in that particular
Yeah, the one
scenario?
specific item that I put in place, and I had this in previous roles as well, but I wanted to ensure it aligned with Encompass Health policies, is that I met with our HR department and grabbed onto individual development plans. So everyone on our team has an individual development plan, and we have timelines associated with that. And I want to know, what are your career goals? What are areas that you want to grow in? What support are you going to need to get those? What additional resources can we apply? And then we come back and we keep tracking this on a regular basis. So I know my direct reports know, everyone on a team knows where we're investing in this person, and the person has a personal ownership to it because it's his or her plan, and it's their responsibility to continue to engage with their respective leader or with me about their individual plan. We're building knowledge, we're building education, we're empowering and enriching growth.
I think that's so interesting. I'm thinking about it, and this is, you're working for a large company. You mentioned how many states you're in, and I'm wondering, this is where the tail can actually wag the dog. I'm imagining, there could be a circumstance where this didn't exist formally beyond your department, and HR goes, "Oh, this is pretty smart. Why aren't we doing this across the board?"
Well, yeah, luckily we have a very strong HR department, so it was something in place, but it is not a requirement. So this is something that I brought from another company and then came in and said, "Hey, do you have something similar?" Luckily, they have something in place, and I made it a requirement for marketing services.
Very cool. All right. So what we've sort of, in terms of this, your initial plan, we started by listening. We engaged with creative thinking to drive change, embraced accountability, managed the 3 Ws, and then created these knowledge assets, which really are sort of individualized plans for development for everyone in the department. So no doubt when you're done with those 4, everyone on the team knows, at least at minimum, that you care, that
That's
you
right.
that you are there to help them grow, and that you acknowledge that you can't succeed if they don't succeed. It's just, we don't talk enough about that on the show. And so I really appreciate that perspective. We're going to take a quick break, and then we come back, we'll talk about strategic planning and some of the outcome that happened as a result of some of this initial foundational work. Okay, stay with us. All right, we're back. So let's talk about, you mentioned after you get these 4 basics done, you move on to strategic planning. Let's talk about what that meant to you and your team.
Yeah, so the first thing I did is I'm big on the rule of 3 because I think people can remember the rule of 3. So I identified 3 core strategic priorities for the marketing department. The first one was the brand. I found out really quickly that, we had a tremendous opportunity to truly discover the brand. What is the brand essence? What's the experience that the customer has with us? How are we unique and different? What's our emotional connection? You get the point. That was one area because I think that is a true opportunity for us, is to tell people about this significantly large organization and really engage with the customer. So building the brand was the first strategic priority.
Okay, I'm going to pause you for a second. It's funny, we have a lot of conversation in CMO huddles, and we all appreciate as professional marketers the importance of brand and what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. And yet, when you go to get a budget for brand in so many organizations, that is perceived by a CFO or another executive or investors as fluffy stuff. Oh, that's that nice stuff with designs and logos and colors and things, and not what they would consider demand generation and revenue driving. And so I'm curious, as you're reporting to your and sort of devoting resources and ultimately devoting budget, did you have any challenges having the conversation about brand with your boss and executive team?
Absolutely not. Actually, it was my supervisor, Barb Jacobsmeyer, was fully invested in it. I met with the executive management team, which is the CFO and our overall CEO as well. And luckily, our CFO comes from a retail background, and he also serves on other like sports apparel boards and things of that nature. So he understands the value of the brand. So when I outlined for the brand, or for the board, actually, the board and our executive management team, the reasoning behind this and the positioning that it can give Encompass Health, I had full support across the board for what we wanted to build. But first, I had to articulate the vision, though. You can't just walk in and say, I want to launch a brand campaign, or I need to, start to explore the brand. You have to have a vision for it, and then you have to have some research to back you up to why you want to actually implement this solution.
And I totally agree. And first of all, congratulations on choosing wisely when it comes to an executive team, because not every CMO is that fortunate that
Mhm.
their executive team embraces brand and enables you to sort of talk about it. You mentioned vision and research, and you know what? I realized that I sort of cut you off on we were the rule of three. So we had
Mhm.
brand was, in terms of
Yes.
strategic priorities, brand was one. What was the next one?
The next one was digital experience. Drew, we had one person dedicated to just website management here at Encompass Health. This is
Yeah.
the largest post-acute care provider for rehabilitation hospitals in the country, and we had one person. That was an area of opportunity for us, and I had to outline it as a strategic priority.
And that's so interesting, and we all know as consumers, and certainly as a result, this trend accelerated in 2020 because of COVID. It's digital first everything,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And we look at websites and we look for reviews and we make purchase decisions as a result of, and it doesn't matter what category, whether, it could be anything now. Your digital experience defines the brand. So what did you, in that world of digital experience, there's so much. How
That's
did you
right.
sort of build a plan for that? And what kind of team did you end up needing or ended up getting?
Yeah, so what the first thing that I did is started to outline what are the opportunities that we have here. And then from there, I was able to, as a part of the redesign for marketing services, because we had to go through a significant redesign to actually get to the place to actually implement digital. So a lot of what we have today on the digital marketing team are new hires. So I went out and hired a director of digital marketing. She has extensive experience with managed care companies in that B2B experience. So I needed that level of expertise. So I hired her, and then the smart thing that you do as a head of marketing is that you hire smart people that know a heck of a lot more than you do, and you get out of their way. You give them the resources that they need to be successful, the resources from a human staff resources, and then agency support or whatever expertise that they need. And what I did is I got out of her way. We talked daily, hourly, about search, about social, about web. We have an overall strategy for digital marketing. And I've empowered her to go and grow her team and build the resources she needs to ensure that our digital strategy aligns with what we're trying to accomplish from a strategic marketing perspective.
So, and all of that makes sense when I think about, and we started the conversation talking about digital experience, and we're now talking about digital marketing. And
Mhm.
I can separate those two. And I
Okay.
think customer experience and how they
Mhm.
come into the door and how they interact is one thing, versus so much of digital marketing is about outbound and SEO, SEM, and demand
Mhm.
generation. Is this person that is in charge of digital marketing also in charge of digital experience?
She's in charge of digital marketing. What
Okay.
I would say about experience is my third strategic priority, and that's customer and market intelligence. Now,
Okay.
that individual is responsible for the experience side of things because that person is obsessed with the customer. She's truly zeroing in on customer behavior, what their needs are, how they want to be communicated with. And when I'm saying customers here, because we're a B2B to C company. So when I'm saying customers here, it's our referral source partners at an acute care hospital. It's those case managers. It's the discharge planners, it's physicians, it's therapists at those acute care hospitals. We need to have a partnership with them, not just sell to them, but provide a level of service and storytelling to them. And that individual is truly focused on those individuals and those relationships. So then we know digitally how we should be creating that experience with those referral sources. So it all ties together.
So I'm curious. So these priorities, brand, digital marketing, and we'll call it customer marketing intel.
That's
Did
right.
you end up reorganizing your teams across those priorities?
Exactly. So we started with the guiding principles, and the second piece was to have the strategic priorities. Then it was the redesign of the team. So I created several different functions on the team. The first one was customer and market intelligence. We didn't have a research arm. We didn't understand who we were engaging with. We didn't even prioritize our key audiences. So that was put in place first. The second piece was a digital marketing team. I hired a director of digital marketing, and she's now has been hiring aggressively over the last several months. I believe she has a team of 7 or 8 right now, with more to come. That's another area that we brought on. Brought on a brand marketing team as well, and that's where marketing design is included under that. So our graphic designers, our videographers, etc., our project managers, and then we have what we call regional marketing managers. Those would be equivalent to like a product marketer at another B2B company. So those individuals are responsible for hospitals in the field. So all of them have responsibilities for those individual hospitals, understanding those individual business objectives for those hospitals, and how we, from a marketing perspective, actually strategize and deliver solutions. And then
You,
yeah,
go ahead.
and then we have a couple more. We have a communications arm, which is responsible for content, communications, public relations. So think of that as internal, external comms. And then lastly, we still have our print services capabilities as well. So that makes up the marketing department here at the marketing services department here at Encompass Health.
And so one of the things is you were talking about the customer and marketing intelligence, and it just occurred to me as I was thinking how powerful it is when you have your internal research organization having, the finger on the pulse of what your customer is thinking, and also as a potentially as a source for content, right? If you're
That's
fielding this
exactly
study,
right.
you can sort of turn it around. So not only can you use that for sales and to guide marketing and inform it, but you can create content around it. And so having that feels so important and essential. But I'm often surprised to see that there are plenty of marketing departments out there that don't have that. They have they might not even own, they might have there could be something called customer success, but those folks are really about making sure that the customer is, say, using the product or service correctly, or a customer experience department, which is really just is looking at how the customer is engaging along the way, but there's nobody there necessarily adding it up, measuring it, and so forth. And that's where I wanted to go next with all of this is we have these 3 strategic priorities: brand, digital experience, and sort of marketing intelligence. And each of those really must come, because you mentioned accountability, come with their own sort of metric sets. And I'm curious how you hold you and your team accountable on setting goals for those 3 departments or
Yeah,
3
so
priorities.
so those are the 3 priorities, and then what to ensure alignment with everyone across our marketing services enterprise. What we did is we put together a strategic plan. And within that plan, we have our overall goals. We want to we want to build growth in a specific disease condition, which is what we mostly treat here at Encompass Health. We may want a goal around another specific audience. I got to be respectful and not specifically mention some of these goals on the call because we're in a very highly competitive business. But then from there, what each individual department has is that they have strategies that all align with achieving those business goals. And those business goals are all the way rolled up to the operations of the entire organization. So if you're digital marketing, you have strategies on how you're going to build, growth in that specific disease condition. If you're the content team, you have content goals and communications goals and PR strategies that align with that. If you're a regional marketing manager, your job is to be the center glue that brings digital marketing, content, research, everything into one, and then package that solution to the actual end customer, which is our hospitals within the field. So everyone is accountable to the overall same plan, and everyone specifically, even tactically, driven down to the tactics, know their role and how it plays with measures around it as well.
And that has to make sort of management and the easier part of the conversations that you talked about individual plans. Here we don't have to individual plans that align with your overall strategic priorities. Makes total sense. I get all of this. Again, you've been there 16 months. I'm curious how long it took you to get to the point where we've got everybody with the same goals and the tactics defined under these three strategic priorities.
I'll tell you this, you'll be surprised. I did it in exactly 12 months.
12
We
months.
we rolled all of this out before the end of the fiscal year, which was December, because I wanted to be ready for 2021, because we were launching four, or in the process right now of launching four campaigns in 2021 with the potential of five. And the only way I knew that for us to get there was to wrap this up by December of 2020. How did I wrap it up? Going back to those guiding principles of who does what by when, having a vision and holding the team accountable to that. And luckily, when you have a vision, when people see that they can contribute to it, people want to invest in the vision. There's not much I need to do on my end because people are about developing and growing their personal craft.
So it sounds, you, again, I mentioned this at the beginning, you have such a calm, reassuring, confident demeanor as you explain this. Is there anything about this that keeps you up at night?
I would say this, not up at night, but things that I think about routinely. I would say this is that as we continue to implement the change, we had to be very deliberate about all of our allies across the organization and being mindful of when is the right move to right time to implement X. When should we implement Y? Because as you can imagine, this is the first time that we've brought together a strategic marketing department. So, we as marketers, we're aggressive, we're hungry, we're ready to go. You have to be deliberate. So I spent a lot of my time reflecting, thinking, and engaging with different leaders across the company to ensure we're making the right moves at the right time. It's precision, man. This is a precision and a precise process because you can easily screw this up if you don't talk with the right people and be deliberate with your approach.
And I'm so glad you said that because it just reminds me a lot of what you described in this process you can do in isolation, but we all know that marketing doesn't work in isolation. You have all sorts of dependencies, and it only works if the whole organization embraces it. And really, the head of marketing has to build those bridges and has to make sure that that you're seen as in service. I mean, it's funny, the transformation that you're describing, you went from order taking to still being in service of other departments. But the difference is you had a plan, you had the right people in place, and now you could suddenly deliver on a level that could have a material impact on the business.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is just a brilliant playbook, and I feel like we've covered tremendous ground. Is there any sort of lesson learned? So we've talked, besides the fact of reaching out, is there any other lesson learned that you have that sort of this particular experience really drove home?
I will say this, as a part of the change management exercise that we went through, the key to all of this is that you're focused on the customer, but the second piece is to know your business. Truly understand. Healthcare is a complicated industry. It's important to truly understand the business, and then where can marketing make an impact? Where can we make an impact to actually help grow the business? That's a key element that I think all marketers have to focus on, regardless of what B2B space you're in, because that wasn't the focus initially with marketing in the past. We started asking different questions. We started getting access to data. We started spending more time with our controllers and financial operators. We started to be a part of those discussions, and folks were like, wow, marketing now is contributing to growth. It's a different conversation now. And then from there, then you start to get invited in different circles. And then the field and others start to respect what you're doing because you actually are caring about what the end goal is, as opposed to just responding to a tactic and implementing.
I,
That's
That's huge. And I love, I'm going to just put a big quotes around marketing is contributing to growth. You want to earn a seat at the table, you better be thinking about the shortest distance between you and your contribution to growth. Johnny Smith Jr., thank you very much for your really profound and followable instruction here. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity, Drew. Nice to talk with you.
And to all the listeners here, if marketing is a contribution to growth, I have an ask for you. Do me a favor and share this show if you enjoyed it with a fellow marketer, or do a review of the show on your favorite podcast channel. We really appreciate your listening and your support in sharing it, because sharing is caring. Okay. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Audio production is by Sam Beck. Show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the best B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.